once again, and I am speaking about transmuting the energies of traumatized families. Wait, whoo, that's one of those topics that a lot of us we're struggling to find a way to, I would say, transmute, which means to change, take the energy of, and make greater the energy of traumatized families. I know being Black, living in the South, I'm even being white, race is not the question here. I think the question here is more or less, what can we do as humans to transmute dysfunctional energy? It's very important that we learn the steps. And in my own personal spiritual journey, I've learned to do certain things and develop a system of being able to transmute that energy. Because that's what it's really about. It's really about becoming better, becoming a better person, becoming a better father, becoming a better mother, becoming a better cousin, becoming a better friend, becoming a better co-worker. These are the things that make us better human beings as we move forward in life. And so I've developed a 9-step technique for transmuting energy. And within these 9 steps, there's some knowledge and some wisdom that we can gather to move forward. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychoanalysis or anything. Everything that I bring forth is basically coming from the perspective of my own experiences and my observation of the experiences of others. So step number 1 is that you got to acknowledge the trauma. You have to acknowledge it. We come from dysfunctional families. Many of us come from dysfunctional communities. And I think that this dysfunction, it surpasses like race, it surpasses class, it surpasses gender, and it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. All families have some form of dysfunction. And what society does is they take the classes, the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class of people, and they pit everybody against one another, which creates more trauma in society. See, when you got the poor people, the lower class, they're being ostracized. Then you have the middle class and the upper class. Then you have the middle class that are being ostracized by the elites. So when you acknowledge the trauma that you're going through, that is the first step towards developing spiritual power. You have to realize it's there. Now, what society does is society takes trauma and culturalize it. Ain't that something? Think about it. Everything that's negative is being implemented into culture as, that's cultural. That's our culture. This is just what we do. But the whole time, what we do is destructive to the building of where we're trying to go as a unit or even as individuals. Now, acknowledging the trauma means I have to really say, you have to really say to yourself, you know what? This is bad. You have to say that. You have to say this is bad. When you're going through problems with your parents, when you're going through problems with your grandparents or your mother or your father, you have to say, this is bad. This is something that I don't want to experience. So what do we do with that acknowledgement of the trauma? What do we do with it? Well, when we acknowledge trauma, we are acknowledging the fact that the cards that have been dealt to us in life is not favorable. Like, we don't like it. You know, like when you're playing spades, you want to have the ace, king, queen, and jack of spades. And probably a 10 and a 9, also, you want to have those cards. What happens when you're dealt the deuce of hearts, the deuce of clubs, the 4 of clubs, the 3 of diamonds? You see what I'm saying? The 9 of clubs. What happens when you dealt that hand? You still have to play it. And part of acknowledging is say, hey, these are the circumstances that I have in front of me. These are the family members that I have. Now, when we look at these family members, we say, well, dang gone it. These family members are like crucial. One of the worst things that we go through, as people, black, white, whoever, is we have family members who are at war with one another. Think about it. We have family members who are at war with one another. They talk about each other. They slander each other. And then during Thanksgiving and Christmas, you already know, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, they come together and everybody's smiling in each other's face like everything's cool. And they say, well, we're just doing it because for the family. What that does, it culturalizes dysfunction to say it's okay for me to hate my cousin. It's okay for me to dislike my mother. It is okay for me to dislike my father. But during Thanksgiving time, we just need to come together and get along without resolving the issues. You see, acknowledging the trauma means that we must recognize and accept the events that were traumatic. This means identifying and admitting the presence of trauma and understanding the effects that it has on the individuals and the family unit as a whole. Denying it, acting like it don't exist, coming around during Christmas and Thanksgiving and partying and celebrating with the family members that have dysfunctional orders with them and not trying to resolve it, it prevents the healing. It prevents the move forward to correcting it. Now, we know what the black sheep and the scapegoat is all about. That's the energy of the healer in the family. Now, becoming a black sheep of the family is not a good task, because that's the one that says, I acknowledge the trauma now. I see what's going on. And when you see what's going on, the first thing that activates is your emotions. Your emotions is your spirit. That's your spirit. That's something in you, like that gut energy, that anxiety, that depression. It all kicks in at one time. And you're like, man, this ain't right. And for some of us, we crash out, and others of us, we distance ourselves from these family members, or we speak up. But there's a penalty for speaking up now. Oh, yeah. When you speak up and say, hey, this ain't right, what happens? The people that want to perpetuate and keep the traumatic cycle going on, some directly, some indirectly, more so, it's really indirectly. Because a lot of the people in our families are programmed to think that way. They have culturalized dysfunction, you see? And so when the dysfunction is culturalized, it's considered normal. It's like saying, hey, this is normal behavior. This is what we do. This is who we are. But that acknowledgement, honestly, that acknowledgement of knowing that this is what's going on and knowing that somebody has to work towards changing it. Because in every family structure, there are adults and there are children. And so when we as adults continue dysfunctional cycles, what eventually happens is we are programming our children who are observers of the dysfunction. You see, our children, they observe. Even though they don't have the mental capacity to be like, hey, this ain't right, or this is wrong, they're observing, and children are like sponges. So they're going to soak it up. When they see that dysfunctional actions going on in your family structure, they soak it up as the truth. They soak it up as, this is how I should behave. This is how I should think. So if no one comes forth and say, no, this is not right, what happens is it get culturalized to the predecessors, to the next generation. They think it's okay. You know, one of the most horrible things that happens in families that shows the dysfunction, like in other instances, dysfunction can operate under the radar. But when the elder passes away in a family, you know, like when granny passed away or grandpa passed away, and they got some land or they got some property, that's when the dysfunction comes out. It comes out. It's going to come out. Now, everybody jumping up. Oh, this is my house. Hold up. Grandma left the house to me. Oh, no. Grandma left the house to me. No, grandma left the house to me. Grandpa, he left me the house. And you know what happens when they find the will? They'll go and look for the will. Grandpa ain't even, grandma ain't even in the grave yet. They're looking for the will. As soon as they find the will, they tear it up, throw it away. What happens? Now you got to go to probate court, and the probate judge has to make a decision and divide everything up for everybody because one person decides to tear up the will or something like that. You see, that's toxic. And when the elders and the families pass away, that's when all the toxic behavior comes out. That's when you see all the dysfunction. So acknowledging that these things exist puts us in a certain place where we have to look at it and say, man, what can we do to resolve it? What steps can we take to resolve it? So there's a saying that hurt people, and I carry it on to add on to it to say that destroyed people destroy others. That's a fact. People who are destroyed, meaning that their programming is so deeply rooted, meaning that their programming is so embedded in their minds, their hearts, and their spirit that they have internalized the idea that what they're doing is right and this is the way that we should go about things. And that's the problem. When you're questioning it, you ask questions, they ostracize you. Families originated the concept of triangulation. How many of you guys, now that's a question, seriously, I want you guys to answer it. How many of you guys have been in a situation where you were triangulated by either a parent, a grandparent, or a family member? Now, let me explain triangulation. Triangulation is when one person, particularly an elder, they would use their status as an elder for control over you. You know, I'm your father. I'm your mother. I'm your grandmother. You should listen to what I'm saying based on seniority. When the whole time that seniority is operating from a sphere of awareness of dysfunction. And so you're like, I don't want to disrespect my grandma by telling her I can't listen to that. I don't want to disrespect my moms by telling her I don't want to listen. You're wrong. And the moment you tell them they're wrong, and hey, the world has changed. You're stuck in 1942 way of thinking, and we're in 2025, and those techniques and strategies of ways of thinking may have worked back in 1942, but they won't work in 2025. And the moment you try to bring that awareness to them, now the first step, bring that awareness to them in a cool, calm way. Like, you know what, Mom? You know what, Dad? You know what, Granny? Nah, it really don't work like that anymore. Like, we don't think like that anymore. Like, this is how we think. And then the first thing that a dysfunctional elder does is put their seniority up first. Well, I'm your mama. Well, I'm your daddy. Well, I'm your grandpa. And that is viewed as a requirement to listen to them. And a lot of our elders don't know that their title as elders who are operating from a dysfunctional sphere of awareness is what carries on and perpetuates generational trauma. And anyone who acknowledges it and tries to deal with it or tries to help change that awareness, you get triangulated. So now your mother, father, grandpa, whoever, because you kind of question the dysfunctional pattern of the family, they get on the phone. We know. Many of y'all know. Get on the phone. What's the first thing they do? Oh, they call y'all the cousin. Oh, she tell me this. He tell me that. He being disrespectful. And that's the key to understanding trauma. Because they'll use you're being disrespectful when really you're just challenging dysfunction because you're the one in the family, because every family has a healer. And people think healing is something like, oh, healing is meditation. Healing is lifting weights, getting bigger. Healing is isolation. It doesn't change it. Healing is ugly, very brutal, very brutal. Because the people in your family that you're breaking the generational curses from, they're going to attack you through triangulation. They're going to call everybody and tell them you're wrong. You being disrespectful. And they use that word. He being disrespectful. She being disrespectful. Now, that's why it's very important. Now, I'm going to tell you from experience. Breaking traumatic cycles. You can come at it in a very cool, calm way at first. They're going to hit you with triangulation. They're going to hit you with the title. I'm your mama, daddy. I'm the big brother. I'm the big sister. And you should listen based on the fact that I hold this title. And you're thinking, so I should listen to you because you're an elder? Only when you're right, only when you're teaching positive fundamentals, really should I listen. But I also have the right to question things. I also have the right to point out, hey, we can evolve. Our family can evolve if we take this path. And the moment that they triangulate you shows you that they are committed to dysfunction. They're just committed to it. And so what it does to the spirit of the family healer, the person that is responsible for breaking that generational cycle, they will break your spirit. That's why it's called a generational curse breaker. It's either you break the cycle or the cycle breaks you. You see? That's how it happens. It's either you break the cycle or the cycle breaks you. So most people who suffer from mental issues, most people who have mental health issues, tell me where they come from. Somebody tell me where they come from. Where these mental health issues come from in our families. Somebody type it in there. It comes from your own family. They're the ones that oppress and suppress you, force you into a way of thinking that your spirit that's designed to break the cycle, it rebels against it. And so not knowing that you are a family healer, see, not knowing that is what makes you, like what they say, crash out. Now you cursing everybody up in the family. And the minute you do that, the minute you act out of character, the triangulation gets stronger. You see, now you're the disrespectful one. You see, but deep down inside, your spirit knows, but you haven't developed the discipline to know how to approach it. You haven't developed the discipline. See, once the discipline is developed, then you can be able to address these people from, I would say, a very rational and analytical perspective. Because you're going to have to, man. We will have to address these issues from a very rational, logical perspective, and you have to maintain your composure. So part of being a generational healer, which is a generational curse breaker, is you either going to break the curse, break the pattern, or the pattern breaks you. In order for the pattern not to break you, you must be disciplined. Because if you're not disciplined, you're going to be in a position of fighting people, and fighting people, and fighting people, and fighting people, and you're raging out. It's like rage bait. You just flipping out on everybody because you don't have your healing technique in place. You see? So the healing technique must be in place as a generational healer in your family. It got to be in place. Because if not, and you react off emotions, knowing you're right, but your emotions is unevolved. They're going to use your unevolved emotions as a reason to triangulate you and make you the bad person of the family. Also in the families, we deal with a lot of religious bigotry. And now I'll tell you, everybody's Christian. Okay, we get it. But within the Christian cult, there is massive amounts of bigotry. So when you talk about being a generational healer, or you're talking about practicing Aboriginal, indigenous, religious, or spiritual systems, or just being spiritual in general, and you're not a Christian, they use that as a means of saying, I'm not listening to you because you're not coming to me in the form of the Bible. You're not using the Bible to tell me what I need to be doing better, so I'm not listening to you. Spiritual principles are spiritual principles. Same spiritual principles in the Bible, you will find those same similar principles in the Bhagavad Gita. You find those same spiritual principles in the Epic of Gilgamesh. You find those same spiritual principles in Tai Chi, Qi Kong, Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, because spiritual principles are universal. But because of the bigotry that exists in the families, we end up being attacked even more. Even more. This is my daughter calling me. Hold on, y'all. Let me text her real quick. All right. Let's see if I can turn my phone down. There it is. So acknowledging the trauma that we go through in our families, it's a big thing. It's a big thing. It's very huge. And so the next step is one of those steps where I'm against the wall with it. I'm like against the wall with this one. This one is more or less like, I don't know, but it's seeking professional help. Seeking help. In this world, a listening ear is a vent to another room. So we have to be extremely careful who we tell our issues with, who we share our stories with, unless you're just bold and you want to just say, hey, if you like it or not, this is what it is. At least I'm being transparent, or seeking professional help from a psychiatrist or psychologist. Now, here's what's the thing with me, that my perspective of Eastern psychology versus Western psychology. Western psychology is based on, okay, we're going to find a solution for the problem. Like, let me tell you a story. My daughter just called me, right? So we went to like group therapy together, right? One time in the past. We went to group therapy. So, and I'm always up for it. And I told them, I was like, yeah, let's go together. So we went. We went to like an office for like a child psychiatrist or whatnot, to help us, figure out how we're going to manage everything together at that time. And so I'm listening to the lady talk, and I could tell. I'm like, Miss, do you have children? Now, her first response to me was, I have a PhD in child psychiatry. And I said, okay. I said, but, do you have any children? She started pulling out her accolades, her certificates, her diplomas. The lady pulled out all kinds of paperwork on me. But she couldn't pull out a child. You know what I mean? Like, this lady's 30-something years old, like 38 at the time. She had no children. But she's an absolute, complete expert in children behavior. So I had to tell her. I was like, Miss, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't believe that you are an expert in children when you have no children. You never raised a child. You didn't even raise your nephew. But you're telling me these practices that I should do, that I know from experience don't work with children, but because you read it in a book and you took some courses, American colleges and university ain't nothing but multiple choice. It's either A, B, C, or D. And you never raised a child, actually. Never did. But you want me to take your advice. That was interesting. That lady got mad and put me out the office, y'all. Yeah, she got upset. She was like, sir, you can just go outside. And I said, well, I'll go outside. I don't want to be part of this. Because my children, they knew. They were like, this lady ain't got no children. How the hell she could tell my daddy how to raise? And he done help raise all these other people. He helped a lot of people with this. And he did his best with us that he could do. So it's like, and they were like, man, I don't want to go back. And we didn't went back. And so another thing about psychiatrists are hustlers, and so you have to be careful who you tell your problems to. Sometimes telling your problem to a psychiatrist is just like walking on a street corner and telling your problems to your friends or your friend group, because your friend has a friend that's not your friend. So when you're venting to your friend, like I said, they have a friend that's not your friend. And if they are not authentic people, they're going to tell your business to somebody else, and that person has a friend that's not their friend. They tell your business to somebody else, and the cycle goes on. Next thing you know, everybody knows about your trauma. So you have to be very particular and meticulous about the friend that you choose to share your traumas with. Got to be. And when it comes to psychiatrists, many of them right here are on social media, writing books. Many of them are making content, writing books, and getting paid from your trauma. I don't find that to be ethical. A lot of them do that. They sit and listen to your trauma, then they're going to make a Facebook post. They sit and listen to your trauma, and then they make videos talking about your trauma. You know, and they use it as a, oh, well, I'm trying to educate and build mental health awareness. Man, you're telling my business. And when I watch your video, I knew you're talking about me, even though you're not using my name, but you're talking about me. I can feel it in my spirit. So that creates more trauma. You see, when they write in a book and telling your story in a book, they just change the names, and you mess around, open that book and read it, you're even more traumatized. You're like, yeah, I trusted this person. I even paid this person to help me with my trauma, and they profiting off of it. So this is the reason why I'm weary about seeking professional help. Now, when and if you go and seek professional help for your trauma, then I would advise you to screen. You want to see if that person is on social media, because they got a lot of old school psychiatrists that they don't deal with social media at all. They deal with clients. They don't write books at all. You see what I'm saying? They don't write books about clients' experiences and stuff like that at all and try to profit off. So I would advise the first thing you do if you go seek professional help, ask them, hey, do you write any books? And if they say, yeah, I wouldn't suggest, because all they're doing is collecting information so they can profit off of it. And you're still traumatized, and you're still seeking therapy, and you're still paying them to give them information to make money off of your pain. So I don't think that that's cool. I don't think it's ethical, but you know, this is what they do. Now, the next step is practicing self-compassion. We live in a society today where we are told, be compassionate to everybody. In my own personal journey, I practice compassion to everybody I've come into contact with. You know, seriously. Compassion, you know, knowing that people are kind of like off a little bit, and you be compassionate with them. And you treat everybody correctly, treat everybody nice. But the question is, what have you done for you lately? You never heard that song? What have you done for me lately? Dun, 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 dun. Ooh, yeah. You remember that song? I forgot who sang it. I think it was Madonna or something like that. I'm not sure. But we have not learned to really be compassionate with ourselves. You ever got so mad with yourself, like you want to beat yourself up because you're going through something you can't figure a way out, so you get angry, and people think you're mad at the world, when in reality, you're not mad at the world, you're mad at yourself. And so we have to learn how to manage being mad with ourselves, because we go around forgiving people in the world. We go around being compassionate with people. People betray us. We forgive them, let it go. People do us wrong. We forgive them, let them go. But then when we do ourselves wrong, we treat ourselves worse than we treat the people that did us wrong. You ever had that happen to you? You ever been so mad at yourself that you basically, what they call self-sabotage and self-destruct? Not because nobody else made you do it, but because you're that mad with yourself, with you. You see, you're upset with yourself. So practicing self-compassion is really about forgiving you. Because a lot of times when you forgive other people, that forgiveness really is for you. It's not for them, because you can easily move somewhere else, stay out of their way, stay in your own lane or whatever. But you got to forgive yourself in the process. In any type of trauma, you have to forgive yourself. Growing up as children, into adulthood, we carry these traumas, and we blame our parents, our grandparents, and we blame our family structure. Because as children, they are responsible for our culturation of our minds. They are responsible for it. And then when we reach a certain age, we're caught into the culture of how things operate through the family and then through the community. And we interpret that as this is how it should be. We never acknowledge that, no, this is wrong. It could be better than this. And then we don't forgive ourselves for not knowing better sooner. How many of us has been in situations where we like, man, I wish I knew that. Just like me, for example, and you guys too, back in high school, the knowledge you have now, the wisdom you have now, imagine what type of kid you would have been if you knew then what you know now. Imagine that. Man, you would have never cut class, wouldn't you? You would have never played sick and oh, I don't want to go to school today. Because the things you know now and how the world operating now, if you knew it back in 8th grade, man, you'd be studying. Me, I'd have been studying and getting all my work done and doing everything I needed to do. I wouldn't have to worry about the principal paddling me and I going to ISS or none of that if I knew back then what I knew now. So when we reflect on things like that, we got to forgive ourselves. We got to be compassionate to us, because all of us has been in situations where we wished and realized that we had known sooner. And you can't expect other people to tell you, even though if they have any integrity with themselves, they would. So in the process of forgiving yourself, you also look at who you're surrounded by. You see? Why did they let you make that bad decision? Why did they, knowing that they know, why did they allow this path to be taken and these events to take place? So you have to forgive them. You have to forgive you in order to move on effectively. You see? So forgiveness is not always for everybody else. It's for you too. The highest level of it actually is for you. You see? It's for you. What is self-compassion? What is self-forgiveness? Self-compassion is you being kind to yourself. Self-care. For like the ladies, they get their hair and their nails done and they put the makeup on and stuff like that. For the men, you might want to buy yourself a new pair of sneakers. You might want to buy yourself some new clothes, some new body oil or whatnot, a new pair of clippers. You want to treat yourself out, because we live in a culture where we're taught to treat everybody else, especially with the relationship cultural knowledge being spread around the world. Every man need a woman, every woman need a man, and you got to get a family. So you're taught to cater to others more than you're taught to cater to yourself. And then when you start catering to yourself, that number one word that they say, he being selfish, she being selfish. You're not supposed to worry about that. You're supposed to cater to yourself in the same way you cater to others. And so sometimes helping other people is good. Sometimes helping other people is great, because your blessings come from the Most High. Comes from the universal source energy, the ruler. So when you help others, God bless you. When you help yourself, God bless you to bless others. You see how that works? When you help others, God bless you. When you help yourself and being compassionate to you, God gives you the compassion to give to others. The reason why the majority of people in this world are not compassionate is because they have never had compassion for themselves. So a person is not compassionate towards themselves. It is impossible for them to be compassionate and show empathy to others. And that's the problem of the world. So when we see other people being, reckless with other people and other people's lives, we know they have never had compassion on themselves. Like they still carry the burden of all their mistakes with them. They have never forgiven themselves. I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I was telling them, like, when certain cultures, they teach their children to stay away from relationships. Like, it's cool to have a friend or whatnot, but to stay away from relationships. Don't be trying to get in a relationship as soon as you're 16. Oh, relationship. As soon as you're 17, oh, relationship. No, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. That's not operational towards developing a cultured life, a positive cultured life. Because you get in relationships soon as you finish high school. And now you're being distracted by the relationship. And then your goals and objectives go out the window for what? What's that word? That word to start with the L. Love. Loving somebody else. Teenagers are too young to be in the cultural mind state of loving someone else. As a teenager, you should have the perspective of loving yourself. You see? Love yourself. Even as adults should love yourself. But when you're raising your children, you want to teach them, hey, love yourself. How do you love yourself? You finish in high school next year, goals and objectives. Are you going in the military? Are you going to college, universities? Are you getting a trade? What are your plans and your goals? And none of those plans and those goals should include a relationship. Because between the ages of 17 and 25, a person should be working. I know from experience too, trust me. A person should be working on their goals and objectives. That should be the only thing. After the age of 25, maybe 22, 23, 24, when you get in those age brackets, then you could start to develop, okay, I want to date. I want to go hang out with my friends. But if you develop the mind state of being focused on you, and seriously, people say, well, teenagers are selfish. I think that they should be selfish, but not in the aspect of how society puts it out there. This my socks, these my shoes. No, don't be selfish in that way. You wouldn't want them to be selfish in that aspect. You want them to be selfish in the aspect like, man, I ain't trying to get no relationship until I complete my life objective. Now, I wish I was taught that coming up. And I know many of you guys wish that you were taught that coming up. Wish you were taught that, man, I finished school, I got to have a whole list of objectives I'm trying to achieve before I even think about dating. Because many other cultures do that. Their children come out of school, boom, they take off, go to college, university, and they get married, or their first boyfriend when they're 35, first girlfriend when they're in their 30s. But people who are unculturated, they look at it, man, how you 35 with no kids? How you 35 and this your first girlfriend? They're asking all these weird questions. But when you look at their life, in comparison to their life, this person here, 35, with no kids, a college degree, 2 businesses, some land, and a house. This person, 35, 4 kids, 3 baby mamas, 4 kids, 3 baby daddies, and working a basic fundamental job, making minimum wage, slightly above, or whatever. You see the kind of lives that are provided with that way of thinking? So when it comes to being compassionate to yourself, yes, selfishness is included in that. Selfishness is a form of self-focusing. It's a form of self-focusing. When you're being selfish, you're not saying, I don't got time for you. You're saying, I got all the time for me. Because I'm developing the skills and abilities that I need to develop. I'm developing the skill sets that I need to develop to go out into the workforce, to create my own business. So right now, I don't have time for you. I would like for you to have time for you. Okay? And this is how we should address the people that be like, oh, you ain't called me. You ain't texting me. What's wrong with you? I ain't see you in a while. You ain't talking. No, yeah, I am talking. I'm talking to myself. You see how that works? And you should be too. So we can get out of poverty. So we can get out of the middle class. So we can develop integrity. So we can develop honor. So when you do see me and you do talk to me, I can be the most honorable person you know. And you could be one of the most honorable people I know. But in order to do that, we have to practice self-compassion, which is a form of selfishness, which is a form of self-focus. Okay? Now, the 4th step is establishing healthy boundaries. Now, everybody, you know, that word boundaries, like that word accountability, it's being a narcissism. It's being thrown all over the place. You know, you got to have boundaries. Boundaries are just saying, hey, there are certain things I do and certain things I won't. So if you're making a vision board, or if you're just using sticky notes or whatever, you know, write down the things that you would love to do. Write down the things that you are doing, and then write down the things that you won't do. Those are 3 levels of it. Things you would like to do, the things you're doing, and the things you won't do. And as you progress, you put an X or a check by each one. If you revert back to one, you put another X there. If you revert back to another one, you put another X there. If you mastered this, put a check there. If you successfully completed something, put a check there. And then at the end of the month, perhaps, or you can do it quarterly, you look at your progress sheet and you say, damn, well, I said I wasn't going to drink no more. But every time you drink, don't beat yourself up and don't lie to yourself. Every time you drink, you put an X there. Every time you take a drink, no matter, oh, this one drink, and you know, we tell ourselves, oh, I'll just take one little sip. It ain't going to hurt nothing. I don't need to count that. You're cheating yourself. You see? So what you do, every time you take a drink, every time you take a smoke, you put an X there. At the end of the month, when you look up and you got 5, 6, 7 X's, it's like, whoa, this is something that I need to focus on more so than the other objectives. The other objectives might have 1 X by it. But if that drinking or that smoking or that over sexual indulgence keeps coming up over and over and over and over again, and you got X's, then you need to put that on a vision board by itself. Put that on your life chart by itself and develop a life chart based on your bad habits. The things that you feel, well, you know, that are holding you back. Put it on a life chart. You know, if gambling is your thing, hey, Or some people got eating disorders. Some people sit there and eat all day, and then get overweight and then start feeling depressed and sad because they're not taught how to regulate that addiction, because it is an addiction. It means that the brain uses food as a coping mechanism, you see? So every time you get stressed, you're hungry because your body's going to react to that. So every time you get stressed, you got to eat some chicken. Every time you get stressed, you got to get a burger. And then you get overweight and then you get depressed. That's how the cycle works. So discipline is necessary in establishing healthy boundaries. We are taught to establish healthy boundaries with other people outside of us. You see, we're taught that, this person here is, I don't know if I don't want this person around me, so I got to put a boundary up for this person. I don't know if this job is good for me, so I need to put a boundary up towards my coworkers. I don't know if these family members are okay, so I need to put a boundary up. But these family members, I don't want them crossing my boundaries. But how many of us have created boundaries for ourselves with our own flaws and with our own bad habits? You see? How many of us has done that? Look at the programming now. Society tell you got to have a healthy boundary up towards external things. You see? You got to have a healthy boundary up towards those fake friends, towards those fake family members. You got to put a healthy boundary up to protect your mental health and protect your peace. But who's protecting you from you? Because we're taught to put boundaries up against everything that's outside of us. Developing healthy boundaries actually mean putting up the boundaries in front of your addictions, in front of your flaws. Everybody got character flaws. You see? But we don't use boundaries on it, don't we? We don't use boundaries. We don't put up boundaries on ourselves. We're taught that boundaries are being used or for using it towards other people. You see, we're externalizing it. So I'm saying today, we should internalize the usage of healthy boundaries to ourselves. Okay, I'm depressed. And I know every time I depress, I get hungry. How do you implement a healthy boundary there? You know you get depressed. You know that creates a chemical reaction in your body, which makes you hungry. Then you eat, you get overweight, and then you get more depressed. So where does the healthy boundary go? Well, you still can eat. Eat an avocado. Eat some bananas. Eat a fruit salad. Eat a tossed salad. You see? Eat some sunflower seeds. It's the fact that you still can feed the habit, but don't feed the habit things that are not good for you. If you have an eating disorder or, an eating addiction whenever you get depressed or stressed out. So creating that healthy boundary means it says healthy. Eat healthy. If you sit there and eat 5 head of lettuce, 5 tomatoes, 4 cucumbers, it's all good. You got a big old full stomach, but you got a full stomach of things that your body need to operate to its highest capacity. You see? And as a result, even though you're feeding your eating disorder, you're feeding it nourishment. And that is what putting a healthy boundary up is. Now, in the midst of that, we got certain foods we like, and our brain attaches itself to it. You like them tacos. You like them burgers. Well, there's alternatives. Get a vegan burger. Vegan burgers are delicious, man. They even got squash burgers. Squash burgers are delicious too. You know what I mean? Try new things and help those new things become implemented into your strategy to basically create a healthy boundary. Just like drinking, they have non-alcoholic beverages that you think it's alcohol. It tastes like liquor, but it's really nutritional. They got plenty of nutritional drinks that taste like liquor. You can order it from Amazon or whatever. And that could substitute. Now, if you need a high, I would recommend things like CBD. Get you some CBD oil or the flower, and you can smoke it. Even though smoke in your lungs is not a good thing, we are struggling with smoke at some point. But you can use those things as alternatives. Create alternative routes to help you establish healthy boundaries for you. So eradicate the whole mentality of setting healthy boundaries towards others and set those boundaries towards your life, because we live in a society where everything is externalized. Everything is, I got to observe what's going on around me 24/7. You know what that happens to your what happens to your consciousness when you are consistently focusing externally? You got to drive the car, watch the road. You got to sit at the computer and do your work at the job. You got to talk to your manager. You got to talk to your coworkers. Then you have to go pick the kids up from school, which more driving, more focusing on the road. And then when you get home, most of us get home, first thing we grab is the remote. Now you want to watch TV. Then you're talking to your spouse. You take a shower, gets up and eat, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, same cycle again. Now in the midst of all of that, you talk to yourself periodically in your head. You're thinking to yourself and talking to yourself periodically in your mind. But if you should make a chart on a daily basis on how much time you spend externalizing yourself for the benefit of others around you and for necessity reasons versus how much time do you take internally for yourself, you find out that you spend 98% of your day focusing on everything else, and there's no focus on you. That is the trap of society. This is how the oligarchy, the elites, control everybody. They created this structuralized system where it's mandatory that you focus on money. It's mandatory that you focus on your job. It's mandatory that you focus on managing those two main things, your job, your career, and your money. Everything else comes in between or under those two categories. And you have no time for yourself. So you don't really know what you got going on inside you. You don't really know. You don't really know until you sit down or something, an event happens in life to you that forces you or compels you to go within. And then when you get there, you're scared as hell. Like, what the hell? I had all this going on inside me the whole time while I was trying to be a functional individual for everybody else, for society, for the world. It is mandatory that you should take at least 2 to 3 hours. Like some people say, you take an hour or two to yourself. And normally when people take time to themselves, you know what they do? What do they do? Take a nap. I'm going to take some time to myself. I'm going to take me a nap. You go to sleep. Which sleep is part of going inside of yourself, but you're using the unconscious realm. at that point. You're traveling the unconscious realm. So even in sleep, you're still processing things that you've experienced during the day, the week, the month, the year. Still experiencing it. So it's very important to allocate at least an hour or two to yourself. If it's reading a book, if it's self-care, if it's exercising, allocate it to yourself. I even tell people, when you allocate that time to yourself, don't even listen to music, because you're still giving somebody else your energy. And if you don't know anything about frequencies, you'll be in trouble. You'll be soaking up a good song that you think's jamming and you're allowing that frequency in your body, and that you're still being distracted from the music, the lyrics. You're singing that song. Every time you sing that song, you're giving that person your energy. That's why music is, another topic. I'll get into that one day. But what we're looking at is developing a technique of allocating at least 2 hours, not less than 2 hours a day, to yourself, where you focus on you. It could be meditation, it could be self-care, it could be anything that focuses all on you. Have that selfish moment. Okay? That's very important towards establishing healthy boundaries and being able to cope and exist and balance external things with internal things. We spend time doing running errands, everything is for taking care of something in the 3D realm, taking care of something outside of us. But we never put together a practice for taking care of things inside of us. So self-help books are good. Even novels. Some novels are dope. You read some dope novels, man, and get into the story and apply that to your life and learn lessons and go within and ponder on things and meditate, daydream, do all of that, because it's very important for you to do that. A lot of people talk bad against talking to yourself, but I'll be the first one to tell you, who can you trust? You already know we can't really trust nobody out there in the world. So of course, you want to put yourself in a situation where you talk to yourself, discuss things with you. When you understand how the brain operates, the brain has 7 regions. There's 7 different regions to the brain: medulla oblongata and the brain stem, the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, the cerebellum, I think I said that, cerebellum, and all the other parts of the brain. Each part of the brain communicates with another part of the brain. Each part of the brain has the ability to communicate with itself. So I don't know why people be like, yo, something wrong with them if they're talking to themselves. Your brain communicates with itself all the time. The unconscious mind communicates with the subconscious. The subconscious and the unconscious communicates with the conscious mind. The left hemisphere communicates with the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere tells the right hemisphere of the brain, nah, we ain't doing that. The right hemisphere says, well, think about it, man. It might work. We should do it. They say, nah, man, nah. And they have this big discussion, and then they make an agreement to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then the thought comes out of you in a conscious way. So we do have multiple personalities, because each part and region of our brains has its own ability. It has its own personality. So when we think we're thinking, you're not always thinking from your whole brain. You're thinking from a certain part of your brain. And the rest of the brain agrees that, okay, we agree with the right hemisphere, so boom, the right hemisphere thoughts come forward. And then it's time where the left hemisphere, and have this huge discussion going on in your head, from the left hemisphere communicating with the right hemisphere, and the different regions communicate with itself, and they make an agreement that this is the thought that we're going with. And then you make the decision with the conscious mind. Okay, when they say here, conscious mind, this is what we agreed to. And then you go forward and do it. Or you go forward and say it. You see? Or you move on with that idea. So the idea of talking to yourself is only symbolic to the brain functions that's going on. You can communicate with certain regions of your brain through talking to it. Another subject I'll get into one day. Now, the fifth step is developing a coping mechanism and healing yourself. So working on developing like healthy mechanisms to deal with stress and triggers. This, it can include like mindfulness, like we talk about, meditation, exercise. If you're into art, get you a canvas, paint your feelings. Paint your feelings. If you ride skates, rollerblades, go ride some rollerblades. You like hiking, you like jogging. Use art as a form of mechanism. You like crocheting. I know people like crocheting and stuff, knitting. Use that as a mechanism to deal with things that you have going on in your life so that they don't overbear you. The reason that these problems and issues in life overbear us because we sit in them. We don't transmute the energy of it. So you take the stress and you take the energy from the stress and say, you know what? I'm going to paint a picture of what my stress looks like. If you can draw, I'm going to draw a picture of what my stress looks like. If you can sing it out of your body. That's why music is fundamental. I'll make a video about music soon. Get it out of your body. So you have to exert some kind of physical action to channel the energy outside of yourself. Draw a picture, write a book, write poems, community service. Go get the energy out of you by transmuting it into something positive and useful, or something of art. Art is one of the greatest tools that I would say in developing a very strong coping mechanism. Now, everybody can't sing. Everybody can't, even if you're dance. I know a guy, he was suffering with like mental health issues. And he said to me that the only way he can kind of curb catching anxiety attacks is by dancing. So I said, well, go to a dance class. Because you know why? Because his toxic family see him in the room dancing and say, man, he crazy. Something wrong with him. They didn't know that he was transmuting that energy. They didn't know he was transmuting depression through dance. They didn't know that. They just looked in his room and said, that boy crazy. He and dancing to himself for 2 hours straight, dancing by himself. What's wrong with him? He fool. But they didn't know he was transmuting energy. So I told him, I said, and they try to further abuse him by calling him crazy for transmuting his depression through dance. That boy crazy. Every day at 6 o'clock, he in the room dancing to himself. That's all he would do, is be up in the room dancing. And I don't know what's wrong with him. You see, because they don't understand how to transmute energy. And I told him, I said, you're a healer, man. When you're a healer, the people that need to get healed don't know what the hell you're doing. You see, they don't know what you're doing. Every technique that you use to heal yourself, they're going to triangulate that. Get on the phone and call everybody in the family and tell everybody he in the room dancing to himself, having a good time. Something wrong with him. Why you don't go get a girlfriend and dance with her? No. Dance with yourself is dancing with your spirit. You see? And that's what I told him. Dancing with yourself is dancing with your spirit. So you ain't got time for what they got to say, because they ain't the healer you are. You know how to transmute that energy. So transmute it And that helped bring his anxiety all the way down, because his anxiety was only a reaction to the family dysfunction. His body was reacting to it. You see? Now, the next step is creating a support system. There are groups, that's, you got healer groups and there's an app called Circles, which is a mental health app. I've been on it one time. I didn't really like it or cared for it, but I saw that other people benefited from it. There are other mental health groups you can go into with people that have similar issues. And I'm a big proponent of, when mental or health issues kick in on your life, it's like a sign. Hold on. Yeah. Stop screaming.